Welcome to Module 3, Part 1, where we will be discussing the community of inquiry. Within this section, we will be discussing the community of inquiry, which is a learning framework designed specifically for online learning. We will be defining the elements of this learning framework, including the social, cognitive, and teacher presence, and we'll be looking at how to apply the community of inquiry framework to our online classrooms in order to best utilize this framework to drive student success. Research tells us that all students need to develop a sense of community and an overall feeling of belonging in order to be successful and to be retained in higher education. This sense of belonging is commonly created with traditional age students on campus through campus events and organizations, learning communities, and even within the actual seated classrooms where students are able to interact with one another regularly. However, in a post-pandemic world, we have also seen the need to create these opportunities for community and belonging within our online educational spaces as well. For our adult students, establishing a sense of community and belonging can be challenging enough, but doing so in an online environment without the intentional and meaningful assistance of the instructor can be outright impossible. In fact, studies have shown that one of the most common problems associated with online distance learning is a sense of isolation due to low levels of interaction. This can increase exponentially for an adult learner. And finally, a student's persistence in higher education is greatly influenced by their degree of academic integration and social integration. The community of inquiry is a framework born out of the student need for this sense of belonging and connectivity. For an adult learner, the community of inquiry can assist greatly in creating a sense of attachment to campus, to learning, and to your class. The community of inquiry is a learning framework we will be using to ensure that our courses have intentionally and meaningfully established a sense of community and belonging for all students. With adult students in mind, this is a particularly great framework to operate from in that it creates student interaction and attachment, not only to other students, but to yourself as the instructor and to the content you are teaching. Within the community of inquiry, there are three elements: the social presence, the cognitive presence, and the teacher presence that all work together to create the essential sense of connectivity and belonging we have discussed is optimal for student retention and success. The framework itself is created in a Venn diagram format because each of these three elements works with the others to ensure that students are receiving a well-rounded and meaningful interactivity within their courses. When implemented together, they facilitate an overall experience that, for an adult learner, assists in not feeling isolated, but rather feeling included, valuable, and as an integral part of the learning process for themselves and for others. We'll be going over each of these elements in greater detail, alongside how you can implement strategies to use these elements within your classroom setting. The first element we will discuss is the social presence, or the connections established to other students within a course. Within the social presence element in the community of inquiry, students are given opportunities to work with and interact with others. In this process, adult learners are able to share their prior knowledge, which we know from adult learning theory is where they lean heavily in their learning, with other students and learn from prior knowledge and experience with other students in the process. In the social presence, there exists a communal nature to the class, and students are able to interact with one another regularly. There is opportunity to develop interpersonal skills and relationships, and in the process to reveal personal thoughts and beliefs to fellow classmates. This all exists and works within an environment where civil discourse and mutual respect exist, in a safe environment for free thought and personal shared experiences. The main goal of the social presence is to establish connectivity and relationships with fellow students. For adult learners, these are opportunities to idea share, to learn, and to feel like a part of the classroom culture and of the university itself, rather than isolated as the oldest person in the room. When thinking of ways to apply the social presence to your classroom, the overarching aim is to create a space where expression is free-flowing, where cohesion and shared expectations exist, and where communication facilitates growth for all learners. Opportunities for this can include discussion posts in an online learning environment and open discussions in a seated one. Opportunities for students to share their thoughts and experiences, which is particularly salient with adult learners, and will create a sense of attachment to the conversation and also assist all students in creating attachments to prior knowledge. All student-to-student interaction should be facilitated in a way that there exists a safe space to share openly, and where guidelines are clearly set for how to agree and disagree in an academic and civil manner. A simple way to encourage social presence at the beginning of a course is to allow students to post or speak aloud their own personal introduction. Throughout the semester, social presence can also be encouraged by asking students to address the student by name when they're responding to their commentary in a discussion post or in the classroom. The next element within the community of inquiry framework we will be discussing is the cognitive presence. The second element is the cognitive presence, which will establish the connections that students need to the content that they are learning. Within the cognitive presence, learners are able to interact in a meaningful way with the content that is being taught. They are able, through the exchange of information and reflection on those exchanges, to develop meaning for themselves within the content area. They're able to apply this meaning to create connections and to seek real-world applicability of the content they are learning. As we have discussed in adult learning theory already, this is particularly impactful for adult learners as they will continue to benefit from real-world connectivity and the ability to apply meaning to their already lived experiences. Within the cognitive presence element, students should be encouraged to experience a sense of questioning and be able to recognize a problem. They should be able to explore that problem and exchange ideas surrounding that problem. They should be able to connect learned ideas and even prior knowledge to that problem, and then reach a resolution on that problem by applying that knowledge. A great example of the application of the cognitive element is when students are able to teach one another. In this format, students can work alone or in teams, which also would connect to the social presence element, to conduct research on a topic, to develop a lesson plan around the topic, and then to collaborate in a way that allows them to teach the content to the class. For an adult learner, the opportunity to not only engage in content this way, but to serve as a teacher alongside their instructor is particularly impactful as it reiterates autonomy and personal ownership over the learning process that adult learning theory tells us all adult learners crave. The third and final element within the community of inquiry is teacher presence. Within the teacher presence, there's a focus on creating and establishing connections between the learner and the teacher and/or facilitator. The quote listed here by Tinto perfectly captures the power of a good instructor. What instructors do in the classroom is critical to learners' sense of scholarly belonging and ultimate persistence in their academic pursuits. In other words, teachers have the power to not only train and educate learners, they literally hold the power to create a sense of belonging for a learner that can keep them retained and assist them in academic success through graduation. Simply put, teacher presence in a classroom can never be understated. Within the community of inquiry, the main takeaway from the element of teacher presence is the power and responsibility of an instructor to create ample, consistent, intentional, and meaningful interactions between individual learners and their teacher and/or facilitator. In this way, teachers are consistently providing feedback on both the student's work and within discussion posts online. This feedback is robust, individualized, and students have opportunities to solicit feedback often. Within discussion posts, teachers are encouraged to respond to students' posts throughout the week and to take an active role in the facilitation and continuation of discussions within the classroom setting. This is also an opportunity to send out weekly announcements and themes that may have emerged in the prior week's discussion threads. Creating teacher presence is also providing a sense of accessibility for yourself to all students, and for adult students in particular. This can be as simple as offering office hours that are easy to find and access, as well as optional one-on-one check-in meetings with students throughout the semester. For adult learners, it may be beneficial to host some of these hours outside of the workday to accommodate for their busy schedules. Expanding and capitalizing on teacher presence for a student should feel like an engaged faculty member who is creating content, providing timely feedback, and who is involved in the conversations of students each and every week. In an online class, this level of personal involvement from a teacher can keep the course from feeling cold and assist students in feeling connected to their teacher in the same way our seated students are. In tying the three elements of social presence, cognitive presence, and teacher presence together, we can see that they feed on one another. When social presence and cognitive presence work together, the teacher is creating an environment that is supportive of discourse and discussion, both related to the content and also in relation to one another. When cognitive presence and teacher presence work together, there's a greater level of interest in the class itself and in selecting the content for the class. You, as an instructor, can feed off the knowledge, understandings, and expressions of your class. When teacher presence and social presence work together, there's a climate set within the classroom that is facilitative of shared ownership and responsibility for the learning, a creation of additional interest and emotional connection with the course itself, and an overall feeling of connectivity and belonging between learners, their instructors, and within one another. When all are combined, they are able to create an overall educational experience for any learner, particularly that of an adult learner, that fosters a sense of community and belonging to the course and to the campus community. In using the community of inquiry to ensure your course creates connections between students, connections to content, and meaningful connections to you as the instructor, you can ensure that your adult learners, and all learners, have a deeper and more meaningful experience within your class, and that the content you teach will become more applicable and emotionally and intellectually connected to their lives in the future. In summary, we discussed the community of inquiry. We talked through how implementing small changes and improvements in your classroom, online or seated, can assist all students, specifically that of our adult learner populations, in developing and maintaining a sense of belonging and connectivity to your course, to one another, and to you. We have discussed the social presence, where students are able to interact with one another, the cognitive presence, where students are able to meaningfully interact with the course content, and teacher presence, wherein students are able to hear from and actively and regularly engage with their instructor. The community of inquiry is a great tool when seeking to provide all students with a learning environment that is safe, supportive, and collaborative. And for an adult learner, this is the perfect framework to operate from so that students are actively engaged and as a result receive a holistic learning experience that is far more likely to support their academic achievement and overall retention and graduation from the university. As you continue through this module, you'll be provided with a rubric and also a useful tool to begin thinking about how you can continue to implement the three elements of the community of inquiry into your own classroom. Within this exercise, we will encourage you to think through the ways you are already creating social presence, teacher presence, and cognitive presence within your classroom. We'll also challenge you to consider new opportunities where you may be able to continue to enhance your classroom through the implementation of this framework. As you work through this framework and rubric, consider the needs of your adult learners and the ways in which they specifically will benefit from the increased sense of belonging and connectivity to your course and to other students and to you, the instructor.